Hello everybody, it's Friday, so it must be a buy day, and today, as always, we're going to talk about a couple interesting new arrivals right here at the sort room of Midtown Scholar. Let's get right to it today. Now the first book we're going to talk about is a book by a gentleman named Samuel Benner. Now if you can zoom in on this cover, you might be a little bit confused because we have a guy on top of a bunch of iron bars which are hovering above some pigs eating corn and a pile of money. Well, what are Benner's prophecies, you might ask? Well, this was the first book to talk about how to predict price cycles and speculate in the stock market. And it came out under the name of Samuel Benner, who was an Ohio farmer. And this might remind you of a couple weeks ago, we had a book by an Ohio farmer. That farmer was teaching you how to do vineyards. This farmer is teaching you how to pick stocks. Now, in order to understand this book, you have to understand the Panic of 1873. And the Panic of 1873 in American history wiped out Samuel Benner, wiped out his fortune, that is, and caused him to move from farming to prognosticating. And it happened really for three reasons in American history. One, we were in a period of rampant speculation in railroad stocks post the Civil War, and all that sort of came crashing down in 1873. Two, we had two of our most important cities in America burned to the ground, Boston and Chicago. And this caused an enormous strain on the insurance industry. And three, we had a sort of anti-silver turn to the gold standard, which caused a depression in the silver markets worldwide. And anyhow, it caused a worldwide economic depression. But in this depression, Benner saw patterns. And he believed that you could predict stocks and where they would go based on if you could get the cycles correct. And these were called price cycles. And he began to predict when the stocks would go up and when the stocks would go down, when commodity pricings would go up, when they would go down. And he did it based on an understanding of historical data and the weather. Poppycock, you say? Well, no. The Benner cycle is still used today. Here's an example of the Benner cycle, that very same cycle you saw on the chart, accurately predicting the current economic recession that we're in and saying things really aren't going to get better until 2035. Well, if you trust an Ohio farmer from the 1870s to tell you that, you could. The goal, of course, in any type of speculation is to buy when stocks or commodities are at their low and to be able to sell when they're at their high. It's called the Benner cycle today. It's still in use, and this was the first book to really popularize that. It went through many different editions, and it sold extremely well because he not only used a mix of historic data, but he also used biblical prophecy. When you mix those together in the 1870s and 1880s, it was really something. Benner's prophecies. All right, from that book to a different type of book, a more modern book that you might know, and that is the famous Hermon Rorschach Psychodiagnostics text. And you probably know Rorschach. He was a great studier of human thought and behavior, and he developed a test whereby people would look at ink block prints and their various answers could tell you about their personalities. He invented this test in the 1920s, but the book was then translated into English by this publishing firm here of Hans Huber, and it became a sensation really throughout the world, especially in America in the 1940s and the 1950s. You know, in the 1940s, Amanda, they were using this test to try and determine the thought of Nazi prisoners and how we could get at the root causes of evil just by having people look. Now, I don't know if you've ever actually taken a Rorschach test, but there are 10, count them, 10 different cards, and depending on what you see in the cards, it tells you really about the perceptions of the viewer. So Amanda, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you see in this test?
I saw two bears like dancing together.
Do you really see two bears? Okay, well that means that you're entirely normal because that is the most popular answer, believe it or not, is two bears dancing. Now I have to say, when I looked at this, I did not see two bears dancing. I saw a face, and sometimes people can see a face, and you can see all sorts of different things. But Rorschach developed a scoring system, and some were in color and some were in black and white. And depending on your answer, you could basically be diagnosed with certain personality traits. Now, there's some truth to it. It's not necessarily as wacky as the Benner cycle, although the Benner cycle is still in use today. But what happened is people started using it for all sorts of pseudoscientific purposes, and it really ran out of fashion by the 1960s. And so I imagine today it's not very much in use, but there was a recent study which showed that if you use it the way Rorschach intended the test to be used, you can develop a lot of interesting information about people's personalities. So the Rorschach test, the first time I've seen it. Also, one other little fun thing about this book is there was a time when these plates were kept under lock and key because they didn't want everybody to see them, and they wanted them to be fresh when people were diagnosing them. So I've sort of spoiled that by showing you just one of the 10. And also, this particular book was a graduation gift, which is really sort of interesting, to a woman by the name of Molly, what does that say, Hermon, in New York in 1946. But it's fun because it's signed by all of her classmates. So you can imagine a graduation gift. Can you have a graduation party in which everyone's giving themselves the Rorschach test and determining their personalities? I bet that happened in the 1940s New York party that this was a book. Maybe she was going to medical school. So, Hermon, Rorschach. All right, finally, a funny book, and we're going to end with basically the Rorschach test for cats. Yes, that's right. It is Why Cats Paint. Now, I know I'm treading on thin ice and going back to our feline friends, but I want you to meet some of them, including our friends Tiger and Misty. And if you look very closely, this is Tiger, who is obviously an abstract expressionist cat. And here's Misty. And Misty is very good with painting as well, a different style. Now, this book argues the cats paint for aesthetic purposes. But the part that really got me the most is that it also claims an entire chapter that the way cats destroy your furniture at home is really artistic expression, and that if you look at the tears of your sofa, you can read them like a Rorschach test. So, Amanda, what do you see there?
A really big mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, yes, actually, that's right. Yes, it is. It is a face. Those are eyes. And that's a mouth, and that was deliberately done by the cat. What do you see there, Amanda?
I don't even know.
Well, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what they believe they see there. That is for you to discover when you pick up Why Cats Paint, a theory of feline aesthetics. Well, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week and every week at Friday for another edition of Buy Day. Next week, we're going to take you on a visit to our rare book room, not to be confused with the new collectibles room, and we're going to talk about 2 of the most popular authors of 19th century America and how to collect their books.